everybody, and welcome to the 12th episode or video or whatever we're referring to these things relative to the Accreditation 360 changes. And Happy New Year to everybody. That's good news and bad news because being that we're in 2026 now means that these standards are now live. Good things. There's gonna be some great information coming here pretty soon. We hope. Assuming since it's the first full week anyway in January, nobody's been surveyed yet. So next week should be an exciting week, at least for some hospitals that don't yet know it. It's going to be exciting, but it'll be exciting nonetheless. I'm excited to have you all here. Excited to have two of our subject matter experts who should require no introduction, but I'll introduce them anyway. We have Monica Stone with us and Edwin Lofton, today we're going to talk about performance improvement and tissue standards. And this should round out the last two chapters of the Accreditation 360. Although we over the holidays we got a little Christmas present from Joint Commission about work standards, so we're gonna put together another video really quickly and get that out and talk about that. But probably won't have time to cover all that today, I don't think. So a lot to cover just with these two as it is. So let's start out, Monica, if you don't mind. I'll start with you, so there's a lot. We'll start with performance improvement, which is obviously near and dear to my heart. Has anything really? Well, I know what has changed in this rewrite. I know something did.
Always. Yeah, that's been the theme of all of this. And this standard's not any different than the others. There's been quite a few changes actually. There's I'll start with the summary just because I'm kind of a gives me the overall picture of what's going on and how big the changes are. There have been 10 EPs that have been deleted completely. Another 10 EPs were consolidated into just three. And there are four new PI EPs. So there's been considerable changes and of course, gonna take a little bit to get used to how they're going over. There is no new content really. It's all still about COP 482.21, which is the QAPI um, um, uh, condition of participation. So there's really nothing new. They're just, again, simplifying, consolidating, and bringing out some key points in the new EPs.
So 10 that were deleted. I mean, are they going to notice a significant change from that?
What I think you'll notice is that there's less specificity in the measures that they're expecting to see. So, for instance, there were some specific EPs that were related to moderate and deep sedation that are now gone. The blood products and cardiopulmonary arrest, which have um, um, either been deleted completely or moved or consolidated into something else. So I think that the overall is that there'll be fewer EPs with very specific measures tied to them that they're looking to see. So
Okay.
that would kind of summarize the overall changes there.
Okay. What about our national performance goals? Anything new in there?
So this is really, as you said, Steve, this being the 12th video we've done, we've talked about the National Performance Goals chapter in almost every single video because the NPGs touch every module, every chapter as we used to know them, and there's no difference here. Several of the PI standards, as Monica said, were consolidated into some NPG components, but throughout NPG, whether the term performance improvement is used or not, almost the entire chapter can be read through the lens, the focus of performance improvement. You know, it starts with one of the few standards that I'll mention directly, NPG 020101, where the governing body is responsible for establishing the mission, vision, and goals. The only way you can establish mission and vision and goals based on your community, based on those who you serve, is by doing performance improvement and understanding the community. Throughout NPG, there's components about making sure you evaluate education, you evaluate staffing, you evaluate safety. How do you do that? You do that through performance improvement. So the NPG is you may agree or disagree, is PI on steroids, because it is the driver to what PI is all about.
Yeah, I mean that's from my perspective, that's a positive trend. I mean, it should be about performance improvement. Yeah, I'm excited about that. But so, all right, what other PI standards remain then?
Well, let's take a few minutes and talk about what the new standards are in PI.
Yeah,
Um, that's because there's the new ones, and then there's just a few that remain from the previous set of standards. So the 4 new ones, PI 110101 EP2 is new, and it addresses QAPI, and the requirements for monitoring readmissions and hospital-acquired conditions specifically. So that's a new one that they've called out those specific requirements. The second new PI standard is 110101 EP3, and it addresses the, QAPI requirement, um, for conducting quality improvement projects. And I'm going to stress here to really read the notes in this standard because it says some very specific things on what you need to consider in order to meet this standard. So, um, but again, going back to the condition of participation specifically, the third new standard is 120101 EP, and there's 3 EPs that are new, and they're all focused on meeting the QAPI condition of participation requirements. Specifically, the first one is on error and adverse events and the processes surrounding these, not specific events, like it used to say, different types of med errors and things, but what are your processes around managing adverse events and errors? And another thing to call out is it calls out how are you sharing the learning from your evaluation of these, which is something I don't think organizations have historically done a good job at, is taking an event, either an error or an adverse event, and going through the whole analysis process and then relating what was learned from that to the entire organization. And that's what the requirement is now, is that how do you demonstrate that you do that? The second EP is about how you track your PI projects, their rationale for selecting those projects, and demonstrating the measurable progress of those projects. So I think this is really highlighting again, that focus on continuous improvement that the QAPI COP wants to see. But it's never really been drawn out to really focus on how do you establish your performance improvement processes and know that they're working? That's really what this is about. And when I switch again to my Baldrige hat, this
Sure.
is a huge component in the performance excellence standards that are part of the state quality and national Baldrige programs. Is knowing your processes inside and out and how you improve. Um,
And Monica, that's such an excellent point. And on top of that, this is where using evidence-based methodology is so important, whether it's using Baldrige itself, whether it's PDSA, DMAIC, Lean Six Sigma. If an organization does not use an evidence-based PI process, they are unable to do exactly what you're talking about.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
So
I mean,
just
an
in case,
organization
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say an organization should I mean, they're looking for you to be able to say, "We selected these PI projects based on this rationale. Here's the measures that we're using to know if it's effective or not, and here's the result. Here
Mhm.
are, our projects are meeting our targets, are they not? And if we're not, what is our process for putting it back through that cycle?"
Yeah, and just in case someone is new to all of these acronyms, and I hope I get this right. So QAPI, quality assurance, performance improvement, correct?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
I am
Yes.
trainable. So I know, so Monica knew this was coming at some point. She and I both love aviation. Because I'm a nerd, I
Mhm.
watch a lot of YouTube videos about aircraft accidents.
Mhm.
And one of the things the aviation industry does much better than we do is they dig down to the root cause and then they share that broadly, right? And what's been interesting lately is the underlying root cause that they never really talk about is making bad decisions because they're rushed for time.
Mhm.
And there've been a lot of those lately, right?
Mhm.
But if you think about the parallel of the, what's happening with, pilots making decisions, I'm going to hurry, so I'm going to, and then make a bad decision and get themselves killed. We've got people who are working, short staffed, really busy, making decisions really quickly, and that's when bad things happen sometimes.
It
Um,
is.
so I really do wish we had a better process for not only just inside the each organization, but across the industry. Maybe before I die, or as a result, that'll finally come to fruition. So um,
So
we can hope.
I'm gonna just tag onto that for just a second, and I'm gonna put a plug in for 2 programs that are out in the industry that are excellent for creating the culture for performance improvement. One of them is Team Steps, and if your organization is not familiar with Team Steps, highly recommend looking into it. It's a absolutely fantastic program for creating a culture for performance improvement and patient safety.
Mhm.
And the second program that I'm gonna put a plug in for is Just Culture. And Just Culture, again, is an established evidence-based program that helps you determine, was this when an error or an adverse event occurs, was the root cause due to a willful disregard, or was it a educational lapse, or was it truly a human error or lapse in decision-making ability and judgment? And it gets into a whole lot of detail, but those are 2 programs that are out there to help organizations really develop their patient safety and performance improvement culture within their organization. So totally
And Monica,
very helpful.
yeah, Monica, I completely agree. And in my last organization, we did do the just culture component, and within the just culture methodology, there's an excellent survey that is evidence based that any organization can use to establish their baseline and then measure their PI growth over time and over years. So I'll plug Just Culture as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
they're great programs.
no affiliation, and we're not sponsored, but yeah, there's great tools. I mean, that's what these videos are really all about, right? To help people find the tools they need, because it's going to be a challenging year for everybody. I think that's a part, particularly Joint Commission, but regardless of the organization, what deemed status group you're using, there's lots going on, and it's going to be an exciting 2026 is going to be a fun year,
Yeah.
um, one way or the other. Like I might be even grayer if that's possible at the end of 2026 than I am right now, but it's going to be a fun year.
Steve, there's
Anything?
one more hold on, there's one more new standard we haven't talked about.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Great. That's okay. The 3rd new EP is, on EP3 on the PI 120101 is related to the quality indicators, and specifically, they're indicating they should include indicators for the processes of care, the services of delivering care, and the operations. So they're not just looking for clinical indicators anymore. So that's a big change that
Yeah.
organizations need to look at. So they're looking for, how are you measuring your processes of care, how you deliver your services, and operations. So you gotta
So
think a lot broader.
So Steve, they're looking for, how do you keep any wires or cables off of your fire suppression system?
You got
Yeah.
it in there.
Pagers. Just kidding. Um, did that really come out of my mouth? Just that. Anyway, yeah, no, I mean, that to me, that's very gratifying to know that they're finally saying, hey, let's look at the other parts of what's going on.
Mhm.
'Cause it's often overlooked, right? I mean, a lot of times the operations get kind of brushed to the side. Um, so yeah, I think that's a positive change. I'm glad I didn't go glaze past that one. So
Well, it really is driving at this, creating the systems approach to delivering care, and that by including those metrics and really kind of forcing organizations to take a look at those 3 elements, and not just the straight clinical indicators, it is really, getting at that it's all the systems working together that get the end result and the outcomes that we want in the clinical care.
yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the things that, and I'm going to ask almost this question to you all. is from a clinical provider perspective, it feels to me like y'all make the assumption that the building is doing what it's supposed to do to
Mhm.
provide adequate care when you provide care. I mean, is that a safe statement? And the reason that where that's coming from is I've been involved in some investigations where some bad things have happened that were related not only to problems with the building that were
Mhm.
I don't want to say unknown because they were known, but they weren't well communicated,
Mhm.
and clinical decisions that were made based on the fact that those problems were not communicated and they thought things were the way they were supposed to be. Does that make sense?
Well, Steve, you,
I
you
think so.
just hit the golden ticket. That is exactly why the clinicians, the plant operations, infection control have got to work together. Gone are the days when the nurse is told to put a patient in isolation and assume everything is right. The nurse has to understand that airflow terminology.
Yeah.
Why is it there? You can't just have maintenance tell a clinician what to do without them expecting to understand why. In return, the clinicians have to do a good job, a much better job of providing explanations to operations teams of what the impact is on clinical services when the temperature does this, when the humidity does this, when the airflow changes here. This is the perfect world where clinicians and operations have got to work together for one thing: patient safety.
Yeah.
Mhm.
By the way, I was remiss in my introduction. I should have said, please feel free to send questions in the chat. And I'm going to ask specifically, we would love to do a video on critical airflows and how they work from a clinical perspective. If that's something you all are interested in, let us know. That'd be something we'll put together here in the next few weeks. I consistently see challenges with that. And when I say challenges, it's like just a lack of the fundamental knowledge and how it's supposed to work
Mhm.
from both sides of the equation, from the clinical side and from the non-clinical side. And I think it'd be great to kind of bring those together and have both parties represented. I appreciate it. I hit the golden ticket. I wish I'd have saved that for the lotto. And if I did that, then there'd be somebody else hosting the next one. No offense, but anyway, so awesome. Um, anything else we want to talk about from the PI perspective?
The rest of the PI standards are really just pretty straightforward consolidations and minor wording changes with the remaining standards in the PI chapter or PI module. So, I don't know that there's anything that we really need to focus on here other than know that if you don't see an EP, it's probably because it was consolidated into something else. It wasn't, or dropped completely. But there are, the remaining, I think 3 standards are simple, just straight consolidation or wording changes. That's what I
There,
think.
this is where Steve, you already mentioned it, and I think and Monica and I have done some research just today on it. This is where the ORIX changes that Joint Commission just announced this weekend are going to be critical to the PI process as well. There are significant changes to the required ORIX data standards. We will include a link in this video so that each participant can go and find them. Um, from my perspective, and Monica, please pick up, I think this sets the stage for more performance standard changes this year, and pretty dramatically. They have hinted at it. We haven't seen it until today with the ORIX changes. But when they reduced the number of work standards, that opens the door for them to add additional standards down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've dropped 26 standards, measures, 13 um, measures and 13 chart measures. So that's significant. And I do think you're right, Edwin, that this is kind of teeing up to expect them to flesh out more of what they introduced with A360, and that was the measure work with NQF. And the I kind of I suspect that they're teeing up some more certification programs and the measures that should go along with those, but that's just my opinion. But certainly with their partnership with NQF and those measures coming down the pike, I think that's really does support why they reduced the number of required OREX measures to date. But in that link that they're referring to, it gives the specifics for large and small hospitals and OB and non OB. So the specifics are all in that link about what measures are required and which ones are available for optional measures.
Yeah, we'll try to when we post this, the recording of this, we'll try to make sure we include that link in the description so people will have access to that. I mean, from kind of the outside, again, looking in, of course, I know we've said this multiple times. It feels like, I kind of feel like a college game day where you're trying to predict who's going to win a game. But it feels like performance improvement is going to be in MPG and all that kind of rolled together is going to be the biggest part of all these surveys. I mean, we could be completely, that's going to be the big part. And of course, then there's going to be some checklists for all the COPs to make sure they're there, those are
Yeah.
being done. Um, it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. I think we were talking just before we went live, and Monica suggested it was going to be really hard for the surveyors, and I think it's going to be a big. They're probably semi in panic mode this week um, because it's going to be a change. Um, anything
Steve,
else?
of course, I was getting ready to say, I got one more thing to say.
That's right. That's right. No problem. We're under no time constraints.
I always have one more thing to say. I just want to point out too. I was just thumbing through my notes here that we already covered it when we discussed the leadership chapter in one of the previous sessions. But do remember that there are two specific leadership standards that address QAPI, which of course is the performance improvement. So, and again, one of them says that it's LD 120101 EP1, which reads that the hospital develops, implements, maintains, and documents an effective, ongoing, data driven, hospital wide quality assessment improvement program. Okay. So it specifically references the COP 482.21. The second one is LD 110101 EP8, which addresses that the governing body, and Edwin, you have hammered on this in all 12 of these sessions, so I'll pick up your mantra here. The governing body is ultimately responsible for the quality of the organization, the quality of, and performance improvement program for the organization. So don't forget that it all rolls up, to leadership. And those are the two leadership standards where quality is addressed.
Well, and that's where it should be, right? I mean, it should start at the top and work its way. It really should start at the top and start at the bottom and meet in the middle. But it, yeah, they should be absolutely aware of what's going on and be driving that.
Yep.
That's just part of leadership, as far as I'm concerned. Um, all right. Well, so shall we move on to the tissue standards, or is there one more thing, Monica?
No, tissue it is.
All right. Yeah, I can use the tissue. No. So let's talk about the tissue standards then. So what's changed in them for 2026 and beyond?
Well, I think from when I look through the changes, I think when one word applies, and that's simplification. I do think that they simplified the tissue safety standards considerably. They have moved 11 EPs, deleted 14, and consolidated 5 into one of the national patient safety goals. So a lot of moving parts, but I do think when you read them, it makes more sense. It's more simplified. Um, so those organizations who are, I mean, most organizations deal with tissue, but the transplant organizations, particularly, I think will find it an easier set of standards to comply with.
Well, can you give us some, kind of a brief overview what those standards are or the changes are?
Sure. Um, let's see. Um, there really are just two main tissue standards that remain. One of them is 110101 EP1, which is states that the hospital develops and implements policies and procedures for tissue management. The bulk of the requirements are now consolidated into this one standard and one EP. The second EP in that one is related to the development and implementation of policies and procedures specifically related to the organ procurement organizations, or OPOs, and IBanks. So that one standard has 2 EPs that really cover the bulk of the requirements for tissue management. The second one, oh wait, that one also has a third EP, and it's specifically related to documentation of the family's acceptance or declination of donation. So that's a straightforward one that's always been there. The second tissue standard is 120101 EP1, and it indicates that hospitals performing organ transplants belong to and abide by the rules of the Organ Procurement and Tissue Transplantation Network, the OPTIN. The second EP just says that the hospital will provide all the data related to organ transplants when requested to the 3 oversight bodies, which is the OPTN. Um, the second one is the Scientific Registry of Transplant Recipients, and the OPO and DHSS. So the Department of Health and Safety. Um, if they request organizations, hospitals are required to provide it. And that's it. The rest of the changes were minor wording changes, um, with the exception of what was moved to the National Patient Safety Goal.
You mean the national performance goals? I was
I'm
funny. I was
sorry,
thinking,
National
I
Performance
was
Goal.
like,
12
we're
sessions, and
gonna
I'm still
finally
trainer.
get through one of these without making that, but oh well. So to the merits. I'm just kidding.
We're consistent.
Yeah, that's all
Old
right.
habits.
I mean, it's gonna take a while, right? It's gonna take a
Mhm.
long time for everybody to adapt to this. Talking about goat tracks, but
Yep.
so let's talk about what moved to the national performance goals.
So, so before I talk about those three measures, I want to go back and reinforce what Monica stated. Through tissue, there has been a simplification, and as we've seen in many other standards, it's all related to the COPs. There's 2 primary COPs. It is 482.27 and several subcomponents, and 482.45 and several subcomponents. That drives everything, whether it's in the NPG, the tissue standards, or where it is. For your detail, go to that COP and you'll get the specifics. The 3 standards in the national performance goals is 0901, 0902, 0903. And it's all related to making sure you have standard processes for tissues, eyes, everything else, using, here's a magic, performance improvement. Imagine that. So again, it's standardization, simplification, and understanding the process, the outcomes, and the tracking. That's where the NPG is focused.
Mhm.
And that seems logical, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
So,
I really do think it's the out of all the standards that have been changed, I find, and maybe it's just because I'm getting used to reading the rewrites, I'm not sure, but I think this one is probably the most simplified out of all of them
Yeah,
from my
I would
perspective.
agree.
well, I
Mhm.
mean, and that's good. I mean, that was the ultimate goal, right? Was for them, and there was to simplify and reduce the number, reduce the burden. I keep thinking about when we had the consultants forum back in October, and they were talking about, that was the goal, but they realized that it's
Mm.
not really where they're at right now, and they expect in a year or so I'm like, a year or so, holy cow. But I do think it's going to be this. There's going to be an evolutionary process. I don't know how quickly we're going to start seeing changes, but I wouldn't be at all surprised to see a standards update sometime in the second quarter, just based on what they're seeing. I could be wrong. But so that kind of brings us to the end. Right, and gosh, we're just about right on time, which is crazy. One of the things I wanted to mention, if you're one of our accreditation readiness network members and you want certificates of continuing education certificates, that was easy for me to get out. Don't forget to go over there and you can get those. Um, Also, if you got questions, feel free to send them to us. We appreciate everybody tuning in, and certainly appreciate Monica and Edwin, your expertise and digging in and preparing for these things, and understanding what's coming I know we're all speculating now, but we're getting really close to getting some real feedback, and it's going to be fun to kind of to start to provide that feedback through the same mechanism. It is our goal to, we've been doing this every 2 weeks since July 10th was the first one. And our plan is to keep going every couple of weeks, and it may not always be about A360. It's going to be about other things that, it may even be other organizations. If you have ideas and things that you would like to learn or hear about, and hear our subject matter experts, whether it's the physical environment or the clinical or even the physicians, let us know, and we'll try to get those in the pipeline and do them. So once again, Happy New Year. Thank you both for joining us. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.